Every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps his shoes were too tight. But I think that most likely reason of all must have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a snare. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinchy fingers nervously drumming, I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake up bright and early, they'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise, 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 noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which is something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas singing, the more he thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? And then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked, what a Grinchy trick. With his coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around. But since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No. The Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn to the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch says, get up! And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. And their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinch Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck out his head from the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunked with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorns, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. Then he cleaned that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I'll stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove. Then he heard a small sound, like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch, so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled a child. Then he patted her head. Then he got her a drink and sent her to bed. When Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. The last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went to the chimney himself, the old liar. On the walls, he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up to Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-hoo to the booze, the Who's, he grinchily was humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, the Grinch grinned, that I must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, and it started to grow. But it wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or the other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold and slow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. All right. So here endeth the reading for tonight.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad banana with a greasy black peel. Oh, you're a monster, Mr. Grinch. Your heart's an empty hole. Your brain is full of spiders. You've got garlic in your soul, Mr. Grinch. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5 foot pole.
Hello, Whoville. The problem with forgetting is that you forget what you forgot. And I've been thinking all day that I should surely have an assistant. Who would like to be my assistant? Who would like to be my assistant? Any hands? Any assistants? You know what I forgot? I have an assistant. Let me go get my assistant. Hello, assistant. Would you like to sit? Would you like to sit? Would you please like to sit? Come. Now, to be a proper assistant in the story, stay. Why don't you sit over here? Sit. 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 Isn't he a sweet boy? He's such a good boy. Down. Tonight, shall we talk about my story? Now, did everyone hear my story? Now, what did you hear in my story? I'm a Grinch. I'm a little-hearted Grinch, or I was until today, a very little-hearted Grinch. Now, anything else you heard in the story? What? I get that way too. So what else did you hear in the story? Were the people in Whoville happy? Did they love to celebrate Christmas? And the more that they loved to celebrate Christmas, how did I feel about that? I didn't like it. Did I like it even one little bit? Not even one little bit. And the happier they got, the more I turned green. True? True. And yet, why am I green? Because I'm the Grinch. Because I'm the Grinch. And you couldn't have a pink Grinch. Right? I'm a green Grinch. Right? So here's the story. I get a little bent out of shape every Christmas with all the happy festivities. You just wanted to be a little closer? Okay, sit. Sit. Good boy. I'm going to stay right here for a little bit. Good boy. So every Christmas, we're going to walk. Every Christmas, the happier it got in Whoville, the more upset I became. Then one day, I decided I would take every present, every crumb, every tree, every decoration, and I would take it for my own. Did I want it? No, not really. What I wanted was for them not to have it. Because I knew that if I took their Christmas, they would be as sad as I felt on the inside. But you know what happened next? I took every present. I took every decoration. I took every tree. I took every bite of food. And I took it all the way up. And then the most amazing thing happened. Not one Whoville was sad because they knew the true meaning of Christmas. See, every person has a Grinch. Do you know your Grinch? Now, at every holiday, the Grinch always comes out, right? And the Grinch is in us. And many times during the holidays, when the Grinch comes out, we think that we're supposed to do all kinds of things that we shouldn't be feeling this way. But the truth is, every soul comes with your own green Grinch. And the way that we handle our green Grinch is to love it as much as anything else. And that every time we notice our Grinch, it's a sign that our heart has shrunk a little too small. That holidays and Grinches seem to go side by side. And many times, we try to get rid of our Grinch. But the real message, the true message, is that every time you notice your Grinch, I want you to notice your heart. And I want you to see that whatever the moment, whatever the situation, whatever's happening, the louder your Grinch becomes and the more it wants to steal people's festivities and fun, it's because your heart has become a wee bit too small. And every time we notice our Grinch, we have to open our hearts 2 or 3 times bigger and feel the good that is right there. This Christmas, I promise there's going to be a moment when you want to say, bah humbug. And it might be in the parking lot of a mall, right? It might be the 4th time you've heard your least favorite Christmas song. It might be when somebody gives you a present that you felt like maybe you should have had one for them as well. Or maybe it's a moment where it all just becomes a little bit much. Where you're tired of the activities or lack of activities, the calls or the lack of calls, the busyness or the lack of busyness. And right there, that's your moment to open your heart and let your Grinch feel loved. See, we keep trying to love the Grinch and everybody else, right? The Grinch in our spouse, or the Grinch in our neighbor, or the Grinch in the person who just cut us off. And we think that if we could just love that Grinch, the world would be a better place. But who's the Grinch that needs the most love this season? The Grinch in you. And over and over and over again, when you notice your Grinch, I invite you to open your heart to the one that needs love the most right there, and see if that Grinch is ready for a brand new day. See, this Christmas, what if every time you noticed the smile had turned upside down, if you loved you in all the ways that you want the world to do it? And if today, this Christmas, is a special I love Grinch holiday. Will you say that with me? I love Grinch. One more time, a little louder. I love Grinch. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, sometimes I get a little Grinchy? Together? All right, to find another neighbor, say, I get a little Grinchy. And let's say it together. I love Grinch. Let's pray. And I want you to open your mind, your heart to that inner green Grinch within your soul. And yours may not be dressed up in fancy clothes. Yours may just be green and feeling very alone. And the thing that your Grinch needs the very most of all is your time and your attention in the place where love is the most important, within your very soul. That tonight, open your heart. Open your heart to the place where you feel the most afraid, where you feel the most disappointed, where you feel the most excluded. And let the Grinch in you feel the love, the peace, the joy, the good that you've always wanted. This holiday is about healing. It's about love. It's about allowing the birth of the divine in us all. And many times we think that that happens in the perfect part of us or in the best part of us. But the true meaning of Christmas is that Christmas happens in the place where we feel the most alone, the most unloved, the most ill-prepared for a spiritual experience. That's where love wants to be born today. In your deeper places, in your hidden places, in your sad places, and maybe even in your angry places. That's where love wants to be born tonight. that your soul truly is the holy place where all that God is wants to be born. All that God is. All that God is being born in you this night. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is.